Welcome to this live edition of Rev Talk. Here is your host and author, Shane, better known to many as simply the Black Swan.
All right, welcome to the latest edition of Rev Talk. My name is Shane. I'm your host of this show, and I thought today I'm going to bring on a guest. His name is Pastor Tom. He's from the Liberty Baptist Church from Rock Falls, Illinois. And I first came across your channel when you were doing an interview with another gentleman by the name of Jason Jack, who was talking about, I have to admit, this is a theory that I think I heard about this theory perhaps maybe a year ago. It's very recent. I hadn't heard too much about this until recently. It feels like it's got a little bit of legs. And my channel is called Black Swan Revelations because I get revelations from reading the Bible. Plus, I also like to talk about topics that are on the fringe, or right on the outer side of the border. And this is stuff that you can't always talk about in Sunday school. You can't always talk about this in church. So I thought, you know what, this is a very, to me, a conspiracy guide. This is a very sexy conspiracy. The idea of possibly we're in Satan's little season. It's just, I only have a couple of verses to go off of. So it's very hard to listen to some of the theories behind it because it's a lot of theory. It's a lot of theory. So it's hard to wrestle your head around it. But I thought maybe we just start from kind of scratch. Maybe we can introduce yourself, who you are. Maybe I'll just ask you a few questions about who you are and perhaps how you heard about this theory as well, Satan's little season. So welcome to the show, Tommy. I appreciate you. And maybe just tell me a little bit about what you've been up to and a little bit about what you do as well.
Yes. Well, yeah, I pastor the Liberty Baptist Church in Rock Falls, been pastoring it for almost 14 years. I come from a ministry family. My dad was a pastor, so I've been in church my whole life. I've been married for 24 years, and I have 8 children. We just got our second daughter-in-law. We have 2 of our children married off. We have a Tommy, the 4th, on its way, and we're really excited about that, our first grandchild. So the Lord's been very good to us. And yeah, I love talking about prophecy. My podcast, that's the main thing we talk about. We talk about other things too, Bible related, but mostly prophecy, just because I think when it comes to Bible prophecy in the IFB world that I'm from, I think they have a lot wrong. And as a result of that, they've just kind of created an echo chamber where everybody's been repeating the same foolishness for a long time. And there's much better theories out there. There's much better teaching out there. And I think conversations on these different things are important. We need to be challenged. I'm from the IFB. We don't like being challenged on anything. We just attack everyone who challenges us in any way. And I just don't think it's profitable. So I like to engage. I like to ask questions. I want my position to be challenged. And so that's why I have these conversations. And I first heard about Satan's little season from Jason Jack. And I like him. I think he's a good guy. It's a fascinating theory, like you said, but I don't buy it. I really don't. And I hate to say that, but it's just true. And so looking forward to talking about it, though.
Yeah. And I think the way perhaps to approach this is to be like, I hate saying this. I don't know how else to say it, the devil's advocate kind of thing.
Yeah.
So coming at it from the perspective on the side of Satan's little theory. So I thought maybe I would hit you with some of the top kind of ideas that are out there. And then we can kind of wrestle through this and say, you know what, this has my attention, or this is absolutely crazy, or whatever it is, right? Like, this is how I like to approach it, because we do this on our own over coffee. We do this as we go for a walk. Hey, what about, you ever heard about this theory or whatever it is? And then you spitball and you talk about it, and then you still part as friends because you can have a conversation as well. And again, this is why I thought I'd bring you onto the show, because we can share some of the thoughts that we have regarding this theory. And we don't have a dog in this fight, but I think it's always good to be able to have an answer as well, because there could be, perchance, there could be another conspiracy tomorrow or the next day or the next day. So eventually you got to be grounded in the Bible to go back and say, well, what does the Bible say? And without twisting it. Because, man, I tell you, you can take one verse, and if people can build a story around it, one verse only, anything is possible. So want to try and maintain being grounded. So, okay. So let me just, again, be on the dark side for a little bit, and then you got to pull me out of the dark side. So I think what got me kind of interested in the idea is some of the questions that probably will never be answered in our lifetime. And that is ancient structures.
Mm-hmm.
And they, I've heard people say, like these magnificent cathedrals that we don't know how we built them and all that, with horse and buggy and all this kind of stuff. And I've heard theories that they're aliens. Aliens built these ancient buildings. This is why the Tatarians or whatever, this is why they're here and all this. So I've always brushed that stuff aside when people say aliens built it. And then when they said, oh, this could be Christ's millennial kingdom, I'm like, okay, it's interesting, but I never heard of that before. I never heard of it, but that's kind of the first element, I think, that comes up in a conversation when you talk about Satan's little season is we're here because Christ's reign, his 1,000-year millennium kingdom already happened. And we have remnants of buildings that we don't even know how they got there.
Mm.
So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, the ancient structures, it is a fascinating thing. I was just in Israel a few years ago, and I was just in awe of some of the structures that are there. And it's like, why don't we build things like this anymore? And we were just discussing it, how it does it. In many ways, it seems like it's a lost art. But I think there's several reasons for that. One of the reasons I don't think we build buildings that way is we have found other ways that are just better to do things. Yes, they're not going to last hundreds or thousands of years or anything like that, but at the same time, it's a whole lot cheaper. We want to be able to run electricity through these things. We want to be able to run water through these things. So we've just, because of our way of life that we live, it really doesn't make sense to build things in that way anymore. I don't see why we couldn't. And the reality is we have done that in pretty recent history. I was just in Chicago this week, and we were at the Shed Aquarium, which is a pretty cool structure. I don't know what year it was built, but it was in the last 100 years. We've got Washington, D.C. that has some pretty magnificent structures that were all built after Satan's little season. We have the Capitol building in Illinois is another very impressive structure that when you look at it, and they even have some pictures, and we actually know how they did some of the difficult things there, because there were some pretty large stones that they put up in really high places, and we actually know how they did it because there's I don't remember exactly. I don't know if they put it in a newspaper, but there were people who did some writings and drawings showing how they did it, and they created this pulley system, and they use mules to be able to pull these large stones up to high places. So, when it comes to how they did a lot of stuff, looking back, we don't really know for sure how they did it because we've lost all that information. But there are plenty of places we can go to that are similar in many ways that have been built during Satan's little season. So, the reality is we have a different culture. We don't think anymore in terms of hundreds of years from now. And that's kind of a newer phenomenon. I don't know if it's because of the fact that we're getting closer to the return of Christ and it's like the powers that be know it, or if it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that came as a result of dispensationalism, because everybody's just kind of had this mentality, everything's falling apart, Jesus must be about to come back. So we quit doing things to cause us to think about the future. But if you go, even in the Bible times, that was the way people thought. They knew that time was going to go on for a long time. And so they would do things to be remembered. And one of that was having sons, so your name would be carried on, having an inheritance. You had Absalom, who didn't have any sons. So what did he do? He built a place. It's referred to as
Yes.
Absalom's place. And they think
Yes.
they know where that is in Jerusalem today. And it was a way they'd be remembered. So it's just, it's one of those things where there's so many other better ideas and explanations, but they've just kind of taken the one and ran with it.
Yeah, and I think what happens too, and again, I love me a good, sexy conspiracy theory. I love it. I love it, right? You have the flat earth, and there are some things that I like about it that I'm like, hey, this kind of makes a lot of sense. Then there are other things that you're like, I don't know if I buy that because you're kind of going off the deep end a little bit. You're asking me to go off the deep end or off the edge of the cliff, if you will. And I'm like, I'm not prepared, but there are some things that NASA's up to that I'm like, man, I don't buy what you're selling me. I just don't. I can't be convinced that you're selling me something, but that's not to just toss everything out, toss all science and everything out there. But there are some things that I just take and put on the shelf and go, I can't explain it, but some of it makes sense and some of it is kind of sexy and everything. But at the end of the day, like I still got a life to live. I have a grandson. I have a wife. I'm hoping one day to see my grandson live to be 18 and graduate from school. And I want to see his kid's kid kind of thing, like Joseph. So it's very difficult in this realm of end times to talk about things down the road, to have plans to build, like heaven forbid, if I decide to build a building in my local community that takes me 10 years. I could get ostracized from the end times community because Israel's under attack right now by Iran, or Israel's attacking Iran, and the world could end tomorrow, Shane. So why are you taking on a project? I'm not building a building, but it could almost get that bad where you kind of lose track that if some of this stuff doesn't go exactly the way that you think, like the world is not ending tonight, that we do have things to do, like we're planning a conference in October. It's very hard to get end times people to think that far in advance to October, but you got to plan ahead. You got to book tickets, you got to book flights, you got to rent venues, all this stuff. To end times people is very difficult. And this is a difficult conversation because I think you're right. We don't plan like we used to plan. Like there were generations of people that were like, I'm going to give this to my grandson. So I'm working hard for it to pass the torch, if you will. We don't think that way anymore. Like we think very short term, little bit at a time, one day at a time. That's it. That's as far as we go. And if you look back in time, some of these projects are magnificent. They take 20, 30, 40, 80, 100 years to complete. That's unheard of. So I appreciate that. And one thing I want to interject along with that line of long-term thinking is if you jump into Satan's little season, you say, okay, Tom, I'm on the side of Satan's little season. What do we do about history now? Because it kind of feels like what they're saying, Satan's little season people, is I got to throw all history aside. Everything that I've ever been taught is a lie. And that's hard for me because this is like one of those red pill, blue pill thing, but they don't have an answer for it. They just say, yes, they're all lying. And it's like, well, there's got to be some history that is true. They can't be all wrong. And we can't continually be all lied to, can we?
Right. Well, and that's the thing. My problem with this is obviously we know they lie in history. They lie in the present. The victors are the ones who write the history books. We're all well aware of that, but there are some things that are well documented and, that are accepted history, and just saying something is a lie does not prove what the truth is. And so that's my problem with the Satan's little season theory, is obviously making a claim like that is going to cause people to have many, well, what about this? What about that? Well, that's a lie. Okay. But typically, if we're going to call something a lie, we have to know what the truth is, and we have to have some kind of proof of that truth, or proof this is a lie. And so usually, the answers to, why somebody's lying are a lot more simple. For example, in the flat earth world, they like to talk about how NASA lies. I agree with that. We were just, when we went to Chicago, we went to the Shed Aquarium. One thing I was well aware of when I went there is we were going to get hit hard with environmentalism. I mean, that's one of the big things they promote there. And we did, man, we got creamed. And they had just, a stereotypical liberal get up there wearing a mask and telling us, about dolphins and all that kind of stuff. But then they start preaching to us and preach environmentalism. Now, why do they do that? They get funding. They get government funding to promote government religion, because the solution is always more government. NASA, it's the same way. You go watch anything about space. I've been to IMAX things. I've watched things about space, NASA, anything about space. And the reality is, the lie that they're pushing is that we're killing the planet. The solution is bigger government. And that's what happens with every organization that is government funded. They promote government religion, which basically creates a crisis, and they are the saviors of it. And so I don't see any evidence or any reason for them to lie about the shape of the earth. I feel like that theory also requires me to check my brain at the door. I don't see that. Here's what I see them preaching: environmentalism, more government. And so it's the same thing too with history. With history, we can look back, and there's enough documented things, even where we see some lies, it's not hard to figure out what the agenda was during that time. And usually, in light of kind of what the agenda was, you can get to what the truth was. And usually too, there's somebody that that's kind of fighting against the lie during that time. Fascinating thing too, people always will try to invoke Spurgeon in the religious world to talk about nobody ever believed like you guys do on whatever. And then they'll quote Spurgeon, where he is like, debunking people who believe like we do. And it's just like, well, wait a minute. If Spurgeon was fighting people like us back then, that means there was people like us back then during that time. So the way you can kind of find out what the truth is, listen to the way the powers that be were spinning things during that time. Listen to who they were talking against. And that's probably where you'll find the truth. So in the Satan's little season world, yeah, they want to say it's a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie. Okay, but that still doesn't prove what the truth is. And we have no evidence anywhere of anything like this ever being taught anywhere, promoted anywhere. You're saying it's all a cover up, but there's no evidence of a cover up. So it's too much. There's just way too much speculation with no proof.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the toughest part. Like, again, I love me a good, sexy conspiracy theory. Even 9/11 was sexy for a season as well. Like, the government's in on it, all the buildings and everything like that. But after a while, you're like, it gets pretty heavy, because then you're like, okay, the government is on puppet strings, and they're just out to get us all the time and everything. And I get it. It's got its appeal behind it. But after a while, you start looking at your Bible and you're like, okay, well, what is Christ saying to me today now, if we're in these worlds that the government is out to take us out of here and all this, and they're the mastermind behind everything. And then it's like, you can't even leave your house anymore because you're afraid of what the government is trying to do against you all the time. Like, it doesn't end. And what I find happens is, if you buy into all of these things, it's almost like isolationism begins to happen, where you're like, well, I'm seeing something in the Bible that 99% of the people don't see, so I'm going to stay home. I'm not going to go to church anymore. I'm not
Mhm.
going to fellowship, and I'm going to ignore verses that actually where Paul says, "Don't forsake the fellowship of the believer." I think it was him that said it. And so then they stay home, and then they look up more conspiracies, and then they don't want anything to do with their family because they can't stand their family because they're not saved. And it's
Mm.
like, well, they're trying to bring me down. And after a while, you're like, man, this kind of lines up with our hearts getting cold kind of idea, right? So I always try to check myself and go, what's God saying to me today, and dive into the Bible, because I can get lost in all the news and everything that's going on. And pretty soon you're just being consumed that Israel is going to be either destroyed instantaneously, or Iran is going to be destroyed tonight, or America is going to be nuked, or Russia is going to be nuked, or Ukraine. Like, it never ends. And I feel for people that are just living in front of CNN and stuff, because this stuff creeps in all of a sudden and catches you off guard. What do you mean we're in Satan's little season? What do you mean Jesus Christ came and the rapture came already? What are we
Mm.
living for then? Like, it could almost potentially shipwreck your faith if you're not
Yeah.
careful.
Well, it's taken us off our mission because, what frustrates the daylights out of me right now, and it's probably good I'm doing this stream right now and I'm not watching my Twitter feed, my Facebook feed, and watching all the Baptists stand with Israel, and just everybody's gonna be thinking end times. Rapture's about to come, tribulation's about to start, and it's just because we've got away from this mentality of advancing the kingdom, of reaching the world. We literally have most Christians in America are going to support Israel attacking Iran.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous. That is so not Christian in any way, shape, or form. What's going on over there is absolute nonsense. And I'm amazed at just how clueless Christians are about just world things, about how things are in Israel. The Israelis don't want this. The Jews don't want this. It's only a faction. It's the Zionists. It's Netanyahu, who's in the Zionist wing of the Israeli government, who is trying to do all these things to stay in power. And the reality is, if our country would not support them, they would not be able to do the things they're doing. But yet you've got all the evangelicals in America that are just support them, stand with them. No, we should not be standing with them in this right now. There's nothing to gain, and everyone knows it. Everybody knows what they're doing over there is going to lead to greater problems. It could potentially lead to world war. It could lead to all these terrible things, but that's what everybody's expecting.
Mhm.
Everybody's expecting doom and gloom and chaos. And part of that too is it's bad eschatology across the board, but a lot of it is because they're taking signs from Matthew 24 that were specifically about the destruction of Jerusalem that already happened, and they are making it about signs before the coming of Christ. But you know what Jesus said about his coming, that when he comes, it's like in the days of Noah, they're eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage. It's like everybody's
Yeah.
going about their business.
Yeah.
But we've got this mentality that is just, all chaos, wars, everything. And, a lot of it is based on bad theology. And a lot of it, too, it's just speculation. And that's why, on my program, one of the things I've learned, and the reason I'm pretty respectful to other people's positions, even if I think they're weird, is a lot of our doctrine when it comes to prophecy, it is based on speculation, because Christians have naturally been interested in these things for 2,000 years. But the Bible is very mysterious in these things. It does use apocalyptic language, and there's a lot we don't understand. And Christians throughout time have been wrestling with these things. The problem is, we've all, in the last 100 years or so, we've formed a lot of, and really in the last 50 years, we have formed a whole bunch of camps and created echo chambers around them. And we just really dug into some bad ideas. And so as a result of that, people have gotten very dogmatic about a lot of stupidity. And I think we're seeing a lot of self-fulfilling prophecies being fulfilled right now. I think Israel and Iran fighting with each other is more of a self-fulfilled prophecy. I don't think it would be happening right now if it weren't for evangelicals supporting that corrupt place. And it's really sad that we're doing that, but
Yeah.
we shouldn't be surprised, I guess.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people can say, well, what we're saying is anti-Semitic, and I think if you really look up that word anti-Semitic and stuff, you'll be shocked where it came from and all this kind of stuff. But like if you look at the Old Testament and you read it, you're going to feel that God is anti-Semitic. You're going to feel it because he says some harsh things about Israel and puts conditions on them, saying that if you do this, blessing, you're going to be blessed. But if you do this, there's going to be curses attached to that. Moses talked about this. Moses' last song to Israel, he says, I know I'm going to die, and after I die, you guys are going to do your own thing. You're going to turn away from God. This is Moses saying it. Moses, you're being anti-Semitic because you're talking bad about Israel. You're supposed to be a blessing to Israel. Now you're going to be cursed. And it's like, okay, hold on here. Hold on one second. Listen to what Jeremiah is saying. Listen to what Ezekiel is saying. Listen to what Isaiah is saying. Just read chapter 1. And you'll get a picture that things weren't going well with Israel because they pushed God away. And they said, Lord, we don't want you around. We want to do our own thing. And we're worshiping the gods of space and all kinds of stuff. And we're lighting candles on every rooftop as far as the eye can see. You're worshiping all these other gods. And God's like, I can't be a part of this unless you turn your heart back to me. And I'm going to scatter you. I'm going to do to you the things that you wanted to happen to your other enemies. I'm going to use them to come against you. All this, like, it's all over the Old Testament. This is why the Old Testament's hard to read, because you're going to look at it and you're going to go, wow, they're getting spanked again and again and again. I better jump to Ruth, or I better go to Acts or something, because it's easier than listening to Jeremiah say, smite them, treat them bad because of how they treated me, putting them in a well and all this kind of stuff. Avenge me, remember me. Nehemiah, remember me. Like, it goes on and on. So it gets a little bit harsh. So if you just read it, you could almost look like Jesus was anti-Semitic, coming against the Jews, saying, look, this is going to be given to another nation if you guys don't watch out and do all this stuff. And this is how I'm sure people watch this show and say, you're not 100% in on Israel attacking and annihilating a nation, then, are you? No, I'm not. I'm not in for war. I don't like war. I don't want to kill other people. But they'll say, oh, well, you're not in then. You're against Israel. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm for God. And there are Christians in these nations as well that we are attacking and whatever. Same thing happened with Ukraine. Everybody was all in on helping Ukraine defend itself against Russia. And then Ukraine is still going hard with their martial law and everything. And then now we're like, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't have went so in with Ukraine because I don't understand their government. I don't understand how they work. And Trump even slapped Zelensky around when he came to the White House. You could say it was embarrassing for Americans or whatever, but it felt weird. It felt like, in some ways, Zelensky was kind of set up thinking he had a big brother behind him, and he's standing all tall to Russia saying, go ahead, try it. And then they tried it, and then he turned around and the United States isn't backing them anymore. Like, and we've given hundreds of millions of dollars to Ukraine. We're still building armory in Canada, not for ourselves, not for our G7 summit that's coming up on Monday. We're sending our armory to Ukraine. We're building it for them. We have Ukrainian engineers in Canada so we could support their war. And it's weird. To me, that's bizarro when you have homeless people in Canada and we're building armory for another country and we don't have a dog in the fight over there. It's weird.
Mm.
It's weird to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people really need to pay very close attention to, who certain players are that are pushing these wars. And it's always the Zionist wing of the governments. And unfortunately, our government, it's APAC has so much influence on our elections and who is in office. And it doesn't matter whether it's Republican or Democrat. I mean, they've got most of our politicians in their hip pocket. And so as a result of that, Israel feels emboldened to do whatever. And we have in America, we have been turned against Muslim people wherever they're at in that part of the world. And, we really don't care. And it's just sad that Christians somewhere for some, well, I know the reason. It's because of Zionist theology. We feel like we're being good to God's chosen people by hating their enemies. And it's like, we shouldn't be hating a group of people. We shouldn't be hating on Muslims. We shouldn't be hating on Middle Easterns. We should be thinking about what we can do to get the gospel in these places. But we have, in dark places in the world, we have gotten away from a mentality of what can we do to get in there and get light in these places. No, we're just like, let's let it all go to pot. It just means Jesus is about to come back. And that's just an unbiblical mentality. And thank God the early Christians didn't have that mentality. They went wherever they could go, and we should still be trying to do that kind of thing. And so I'm just disgusted by all of it. And I find it very frustrating. It's a result of bad eschatology. And it's amazing how people will throw out clear commands in the Bible that, couldn't be more clear. Just be, like preaching the gospel to every creature, being peacemakers and all these kind of things. They will throw it all out and let a bad theology basically, a thinking on or not bad theology, but bad eschatology, that causes us to support Israel no matter what, and to think that the world's going to pot. Because of all that, we're throwing out commands of, love your enemies, blessed are the peacemakers, go into all the world, preach the gospel to every creature. It's just, we know we're supposed to be doing those things, but because we think in our brain all these terrible things have to happen first before Jesus comes back, it's almost like we want those terrible things to happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of weirdos are going to be watching the news tonight, and they're thinking, oh, World War III, this might be it. A lot of weirdos are going to go on. YouTube is going to fill up tonight with, this is it. We're about to enter the tribulation, World War III. And just, how many times are we going to do this song and dance? Every time Israel attacks anybody. They were doing this when they attacked Lebanon. They were doing it when they attacked Gaza. Yeah. And, here's my question. When is our government and when are the other governments going to stand up to those people and just say, knock it off? We're done giving you money. That's what we should be doing. That would be the more Christian way to approach these things. But no, I'm going to be seeing Israeli flags and American flags together all over social media tonight, making me in a bad mood. Well, I'm glad I'm on here to rant about it right now.
Yeah. No, and again, like I think if we're going to use Bible, let's use Bible. God says, don't, and I'm paraphrasing, but don't cheer on that day. It's not going to be a fun day. Like, don't glory in it. Don't be like, I wish that day were here. I wish. Be careful. Be careful about that, because God said that's not good for you to say things like that, because it's the worst day in the history of mankind, and it won't be any worse after, and there's never a time before. So what are you actually wishing on people, instead of, man, we have a chance today to share the gospel with people. Look at our YouTube channel. We can share the gospel today with people from all over the world. And I do get some people from Ukraine. I get some people from South Korea and other places. And they're like, thank you for sharing the gospel on here.
Mhm.
And this is a beautiful thing that we can actually do. I don't wish, even if there are country enemies, I don't wish for them to get annihilated. It's weird. It's a weird
Mhm.
thought to smoke them out and kill them all and destroy them all. And it's like, well, what did they do to you
Yeah.
personally? Like what's caused you? And it almost goes back to Muhammad Ali in some ways. I remember him being interviewed where he was a draft dodger, if you will. He didn't want to go to Vietnam,
Mhm.
and they said, "Why don't you want to go to Vietnam?" And he says, "Well, no, nobody from Vietnam called me the N word." That's what he said, right?
Mm.
And it's like, oh, that's powerful. He's like,
Mhm.
why am I going there?
Yeah.
I'm being threatened here in my own back door. People are trying to kill me because I'm the greatest heavyweight boxer ever, and people are trying to take me out and all kinds of stuff. You have to have bodyguards and all kinds of things because people are throwing racial slurs at him. It wasn't Iran wasn't doing that. Vietnam wasn't doing that. The Muslims weren't doing that to him. So I think sometimes we get hung up on the idea of kill, 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 and it's contrarian, if you will, with what we are supposed to be as Christians.
Mhm.
It's
Yep.
it's the opposite.
Yeah. Well, our theology and even our eschatology, it affects a lot of things. Our bad eschatology, our bad theology about Israel is causing Christians, and our country is, we have a lot of Christians. There's a lot of Christian influence. It's enabling behavior like we're seeing, from Israel right now, and that's a shame. And into the Satan's little season too. So, one of the reasons I kind of, even sympathize with some bad eschatology is because I understand in most of the theological world and including the Baptist world, it's been so bad. You can't blame people for trying out other ideas and things.
Yeah.
Obviously you
Yeah.
don't want to throw everything out, but how you think about what is to come is
Mhm.
going to affect how you are in the present. And so the Zionist, the dispensational theology, it's caused us to let the world go to pot, to lighten up on the Great Commission, and almost get excited when bad things are happening
Yeah.
rather than anticipate the coming of Christ more as we see good things happening, because we're supposed to occupy as we come. Satan's little season, people, one of the things we see with them is they're getting out of church. Why? I
Mhm.
mean, well, if our main church attendance verse is, and so much the more as you see the day approaching, if the day has already come, why are we even in church? And and their eschatology really has them just kind of pulling out of everything because
Mhm.
they also are anticipating bad things. I mean, it's all deception.
Yeah.
Even if we see something positive,
Mhm.
that's part of the deception. And dispensationalists and even people in my camp sometimes do the same thing, where even when good things are happening in politics, that's just they're just doing that to deceive us. It's
Right.
everything is a part of the deception. And it's
Yeah.
like, hey, what if God occasionally blesses a nation because they're advancing the gospel, because he's being good to his people that are there? I mean, look at
Mhm.
all the wonderful things that have happened in America.
Mhm.
And just most eschatology causes people to have a just negative attitude about everything. And
Mhm.
everything's part of the deception, everything's a lie, and we're just contrarian on
Yeah.
absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And it's such a negative way to live. It's such a negative outlook. And I just don't see anywhere in the scriptures where it supports us having that kind of attitude.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I'm glad we're talking about this because sometimes you need a bit of a breather. You need a bit of a breather. Like I've been in end times, and I'm not saying to stop end time stuff, but when I read my Bible, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to go a little black swanny for a second on you.
Mhm.
I kind of feel like I'm a big deal in the Bible. I kind of feel as a Christian, I'm a big deal. And this sounds prideful
Mhm.
until you get to Paul's letters, and he says, we have seats in heavenly places. We are joint heirs in Christ. And this wasn't mentioned in the Old Testament. So if you're going to the Old Testament to try and figure out the mysteries of Paul that Paul got, you're going to get yourself into trouble because it ain't there.
Mhm.
Jews weren't talking about us living in heaven or being joint heirs with the Messiah. They weren't. They weren't talking that way. It was only a revelation given to Paul where he's like, we are sealed by the Holy Spirit. It's a big deal. Christ died for our sins. That is the biggest deal that you can ever come up with. It's so big that God gave his only begotten son to die for us.
Mhm.
So I don't take that lightly. I don't take the resurrection lightly. That is our foundation. And yet you have people that don't really understand the resurrection and how that's so important to our faith, but they'll dive into all these other things, but they won't read the whole Bible.
Mhm.
Like
Well,
the stats are nutso when it comes to Christians not reading the entire Bible. It's off the
yeah.
charts. So
Well, you mean you're 100% right. We are a big deal because we've been bought with a price. People often ask, how much is something worth? Well, it depends on what somebody will pay for it. Well, since the Son of God made the ultimate payment for our sins, then that itself makes us valuable. I mean,
yeah.
he paid such a high price, for us. In order for something to take us from him, they would have to outdo that. Well, that's not even possible.
No.
So not only have we been a great value has been put on us because of what Jesus Christ did for us, but a great power has been given to us, a great authority. When Jesus, before he ascended to heaven, he said, all power is given to me in heaven and in earth. Go ye therefore and teach all nations. And we've just lost all our authority in our approach and how we are at just preaching the nations. Even when it comes to our soul winning today. And again, I am 100% for our soul winning, and we're right whenever we go from house to house and individual to individual, preaching them the gospel that will get them saved. But one of the things that we don't see a whole lot of today, that we see a lot of in the Bible, is whenever they would go into a city, they typically went to the leadership. They typically went and they're calling on everyone to repent. They're calling on, the authorities there. They're like, hey, you need to believe on Jesus Christ. You need to accept him. And so we're not just supposed to tell them how to get saved. We're supposed to tell them how to live, because Jesus Christ is king. He is going to judge the world because of their fornications, because of their idolatries. And we have every right as Christians. We have a responsibility as Christians to go places and say, hey, the sin has to stop. This idolatry, this murder, and we just, as Christians, we've just like given up, and we're just kind of in a fetal position, just, quietly,
Mhm.
covertly, going behind the scenes and going from individual to individual. And I'm glad we're going for those individuals, but
Yeah.
let's in a big way just go and call these people out, call our leaders out and say,
Yeah.
what are you doing funding all these wars in these places? What are we doing funding and supporting wicked nations that
Yeah.
are doing these land grabs and things? Israel does, this attitude, the land belongs to them. I probably shouldn't even get into that because I could talk about this forever. But here's my question for all you dispensationalists out there: Why? Why do they need the land? Biblically, explain to me why they need the land. And you know what you'll find out if you actually study your Bible on this subject? You will find out what they needed the land for. That purpose has been fulfilled, and that purpose has been served, and something so much better has been provided. And to watch Christians support, Israel in seeking after that which is inferior, and
Mhm.
not even doing anything to support them and encourage them to go after that which is better, is
Mhm.
just mind-boggling to me. But it's a direct result of bad theology, and
Yeah.
I'm just very bothered by all of it. And I really do think, though, I think a lot of people are waking up to this. I think a lot of
Mhm.
Christians are
Mhm.
waking up. I think a lot of Baptists are waking up to it. The old timers, they're not changing. But even a lot of the old timers are starting to shut up. And a
Mhm.
lot of my generation is at least figuring out they better shut up. And you know what? All of you out there, you need to shut up if you're supporting Israel. You don't have to join me and stand against them if you're not ready yet. But in the
Yeah.
meantime, until you study this out, until you figure it out, shut up about it. We've got to stop supporting these people. And I think it's possible that we could see a shift. I think it's possible that Zionism could fall. And I think that would be a wonderful thing if that happened. And you know what? It wouldn't mean our eschatology
Yeah.
is wrong. It,
Yeah.
it would it the basic premise of what we would believe and what we teach would
Yeah.
still be right. Even if Israel ceased, and I don't want Israel to cease to exist because I don't want a bunch of people to die.
Right.
But even if they just went into a complete and total stalemate that lasted 500 years, kind of like it was before, just understand that that doesn't mess up our eschatology, except for in areas where we often try to interpret certain passages in light of today's events.
Yeah.
And we've got to stop doing that. All it's done is it's caused us to support foolishness, and
Yeah.
and so I'm against that.
If you go into church history, you're gonna come across early church fathers that are like, look, we're not trying to come against the Jews or anything like this. Just don't have anything to do with their religion, if you will, because we should just pity them because they didn't have their land. They got kicked out of their land. They lost their temple. They basically lost everything, and they're trying to celebrate the festivals outside of Jerusalem and all this stuff when they didn't have it. And it's like, don't go against them. Don't go and attack them or anything. Just pity them because they want that temple more than anything else. Talk to a Jew that is like an Orthodox Jew. If you tell them you're a Christian, walk into their synagogue and see how long you last. They will kick you out. They
Mhm.
bring your New Testament that you're so proud of, bring it into a synagogue where it's all Orthodox Jews and watch how long you last. They'll kick you out. They don't want you to talk about Christ in their sanctuary, if you will. And if you go to Israel, you're going to run into pockets where if you're not careful, they could get mad at you, throw stones at you on the Sabbath or whatever it is, just for having a tour of the land. They don't want you there. They want money, but they don't want you there if you call yourself a Christian. They don't want to talk about Christ.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah. There's different factions. I think most of them want you there because they want your money. They do just kind of see us as a
They tolerate,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm
We
just
are an
saying, like,
annoyance
the
to them.
extreme, they
Hmm.
don't, if you get really to the core, they're like, you're blaspheming God because you're talking about Christ.
Right.
That's the core. But on the other side, the ones that are Messianic Jews, they're like, man, bring it on. Let's talk about Christ. Let's
Yeah.
talk about our Messiah, right?
Right. Well, and they do. You know, they do not like evangelism at all. And because they see their religion as not just a faith that you can change. It's connected to their DNA in their mind. It's like asking someone to change their skin color or something like that. You can't do that, and it's insulting to them. And so but yeah, they have such a superior mentality, and just us dogs walking around trying to tell them they need to change on something. They do just the level of disgust that they have for us. And it's like that in America too. We went to a
Yeah.
Jewish neighborhood a couple of years ago and went souling out there, and just in America they know they can't do anything to us, but they also know
Right.
they don't have to listen to us. And just
Yeah.
the looks, the condensation, or the condensation, um the looks of
Condemnation, maybe. Yeah.
condemnation and just disgust. It was
Yeah.
just It was really off the charts.
It's interesting because if you've never experienced it, you'd say you just have something against them. It's like, well, hang on here. They're tolerating us, but in deep down inside, they don't want to hear about Jesus Christ. They don't want to hear about your salvation story or anything like that. So once you understand that, I think you can approach it with that mindset, knowing that, hey, you're actually offending them by talking about Christ. So you have to go all the way back into the Bible and see, who did Jesus offend the most? It was the religious leaders, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, all this stuff. Who ended up stoning Paul and literally killing him and removing? It was the Jews that were attacking, and it was, thank God for a handful of Jews that reached out to the Gentiles, because that's how we get the gospel handed to us, is because of Paul, Barnabas, Silas, all these others that are actually preaching the gospel. Thank God for the Jews. But they had a hard time against their own peers. They had a very difficult time. And Jesus said, look, they're going to drag you into synagogues and before the magistrate, all this stuff. He wasn't talking about Romans doing that. He was talking about what was going to happen to Christians back then. They're going to hate you because of me. And if they hate me, they're going to hate you. So once you understand that's in the Bible, now you can go, okay, we're at a spiritual war right now. We're at a spiritual war. It's not about the person. It's about spiritual warfare. And if you're not reading the Bible, if you're not on your knees praying before you start your day, you're going to get slapped around by everyone. And there's going to be even more sexy conspiracy videos that you're going to buy into, or conspiracy theories, because you don't know your identity in Christ. You don't know how big of a deal you are, that Jesus died for the whole world. You don't get that part. So you're going to be looking at people and being angry at people, going, Lord, why don't you kill these people? Why don't you destroy this nation so that we can get taken out of here? That's contrary to the Father heart of God, to say things like, erase them so I could be with you and hold you. I want to hug you in heaven. I'm so sick of my neighbors. I hate them. I can't stand the disgusting sinners beside me. Take me out of here, please. I don't want to live here another day. Do you know how heartbreaking that would be, to hear thousands of Christians around North America saying, I hate where I'm at right now. Take me out of here. You're basically saying I'm no good to anyone here. I can't be of service to you. So take me out of here. I want to go to heaven. I don't want to be used anymore. That's what we're indirectly, that's what we're inferring that you're saying when you're like, I can't stand it here. I'm disgusted. Who does that remind you of? Just think Jonah. Jonah went to Nineveh and he preached, but he was hoping, praying that God would take them out. He would do a smoke show, and he got up on the side of the hill and he waited, almost with popcorn and pop and Reese's Pieces and jujubes and everything. And he's like, man, I can't wait for the smoke show to begin. And then a plant was raised up, a little shadow, because he was getting a little bit hot. He's like, this is unbearable. Kill me. Unlife me, because that's the proper term. Unlife me, because I'm so hot right now. And then when the plant was destroyed by a worm, he's like mad and he's upset. Look at this plant. It's dead. And God's like, this thing came and was gone in an instant. And you care more about that than these people. And they have a lot of cattle, by the way. They have a lot of cattle. But you care more about that. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't you care more about the people? And they all repented. All of them. That should have made Jonah do backflips. But he got mad and he's like, I knew it. I knew you're a God like this that was going to show mercy. I knew it. And I'm so upset that you showed mercy on them. This is how we are. We're like this towards people.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, no, it's an absolute shame, and it is, and it's a very self-serving thing. Al Jazeera actually, they did a documentary maybe a year or so ago called "Praying for Armageddon," and this was not done by Christians. The person that did it was definitely not a Christian, but it was actually accurate in how it was portraying Christians, where it was showing how we have a belief that you know a time of great tribulation is going to come, and all these terrible things are going to happen to the Jews, and yet, but at the same time, our support of Zionism, we believe is going to lead to that. But in our theology, and when I say our, I mean in the evangelical world
Yes.
in general,
Yeah.
our attitude is, yes, we're going to help Israel get the land, get their temple built, all these things, and then horrible things are going to happen to them.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
we won't be here. We'll
That's
we'll be gone.
it's insane because it is. That's how we're looking at it.
Right.
We're like, okay, I'm going to give you money to build your temple because I know the Antichrist is going to come in and sit down, and 2/3 of
He's
you
gonna
is going to
deceive them
get
all.
destroyed.
But here's the thing about that too. We do that because we don't know these people. It's like, wait a minute, you really want these people. You say you love these people, but yet you're okay with all that happening to them. But again, and I get it. If the Bible said that had to happen, like they're saying, well, then it's going to happen. But it's still bad. So where are we commanded to help the bad come?
I know.
If we're right about how the mark of the beast is going to play out, why would we support the coming of the mark of the beast? We should be standing against that. And here's the thing. We were told to occupy till he comes.
Yeah.
Jesus prayed, Lord, I pray not that thou shouldst take them out of the world, but thou shouldst keep them from the evil. So we all understand we're here because we're supposed to be evangelizing. So shouldn't our attitude be that when Jesus comes back, there be as many saved as possible, that we're as busy as can be, that we're succeeding in all of these things? But no, it's like our attitude is we're just constantly praying, Lord, get us out of here. Lord, get us out of this mess. Hey, how about we try making the world a better place?
Yeah.
But because our theology says it's all got to be falling apart before Jesus comes back, we're almost letting it fall apart. But that's not what theology shows. Theology shows Christianity growing, but tares growing as well. Of course, the world is always going to be bad, and things are going to be horrible there. But that doesn't mean there can't be some bright spots in our history. That doesn't mean there can't be some good places where things are great. We've had a really good run here in America. I'm thankful for that. I hope we can continue that. I'm glad our founding fathers, when things were getting bad under King George, weren't just like, well, it's just a sign of the times. Why fight a revolution? You know what? Might as well just roll over and take it. No, they were trying to accomplish something. They were trying to build something, and they succeeded. And it's been good for us. It's been good for the world because we've kind of become the leader in evangelizing and missions, and we should still keep pushing for that. So our world is going to pot, but let's try making it better. And that's what we've actually been called to do. And when Jesus said, teaching them to observe all things, he also said, lo, I'm with you always. And I think that fact that he's going to be with us ought to cause us to think, hey, we can do this. We can be successful. But no, our attitude is, well, he's going to be with us as we're just, getting the tar beat out of us, as we're failing. No, we can do better.
Yep. And I think if we're going to use Bible, let's use Bible. God said to Abraham that in a few years, what's going to happen to the nation is they're going to go into Egypt and they're going to be there for a while, but I'm going to bring them out after like 4 generations or whatever, 400 years, give or take. And they're going to come out. If you were sticking to the theory of it's really bad, Egypt is really bad and wicked, there would be no need for Joseph at all. But yet here we have Joseph that was put in prison, and we have visions given to a pharaoh saying, I'm gonna this area is going to experience famine.
Mhm.
So he's given this vision to Pharaoh. Pharaoh didn't understand it. He wasn't a Christian. He wasn't a Jew. And God is speaking in a dream to Pharaoh, and he comes to Joseph, and Joseph says, I'm going to give you the interpretation. It's not me. God's the interpreter of dreams, but here's what's going to happen. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of bad, and you should find somebody that's pretty wise that can manage all this stuff. And here's how you need to manage it. You need to charge 20%. Anybody bringing stuff, put that in the storehouse, do this, that. And Pharaoh's looking around going, is there anyone else? Like, why don't we just hire this guy? And he promoted him to the top of the food chain in Egypt, a pagan society that worshiped gods like no one else. They basically invented the whole idea of worshiping other gods. They perfected it. And yet Joseph is the top of the food chain, second in command only to Pharaoh. Pharaoh was only higher by name, but everything else, whatever Joseph wanted and said, they would do it. And if they didn't, they probably could get killed for disobeying an order by Joseph. So if we're using the mentality today that we're out of here, so let's just let this thing go to hell in a handbasket, search the scriptures. Did you see anything like that happen? Instead, it kind of looks like God was promoting people where they were at. Think about Daniel. We preach Daniel all the time about the Antichrist and everything, but Daniel was promoted to the top of the food chain in Babylon, the most wicked nation arguably on earth. And yet Daniel was there doing his job, going to work every day. And so I think there is something about occupying and being comfortable with the idea of living to be a ripe old age. Like, I hope I live to 120. I kind of doubt it, because I had a little bit too much fast food in my time. But I don't mind the idea of seeing my grandson's kids. I honestly don't. I look forward to watching them graduate from college. All this stuff. I want more grandchildren, not less, because the world is ending tonight. Like, that's my mindset, but it's contrary in the world of end times, because people are like, no, I'm sick of this place. And I might get comments here. Like, I'm scared to open up the comments. I haven't looked at the comments because I know what I'm going to see, especially at the beginning, is we're out of here. We're out of here. We're out of here. Don't plan for tomorrow. Don't plan anything. And it's like, well, if you wake up tomorrow morning, then what? Then what now? You're going to just restart it again and say, we're out of here tonight? Like, that gets old on people that you're trying to win over for Christ. If you think you're going to win them over by saying the world's ending tonight, that fear of God and fire and thunder, I get it. What about this? What about flipping the script and saying, what if I just love on people unconditionally first, treat them way better than I treat myself, and let's just see what happens, and allow the Holy Spirit to give you the right words at the right time, because you're diving into the Bible every single day. What would happen if we just did that for a little while and tried that one out? I wonder what would happen.
Well, I just noticed somebody in the comments, they said, what about we watch and wait for the coming of the Lord? And I agree. And the way we do that is by being ready. In other words, we are actively, aggressively doing what he called us to do. And nowhere are we called to just throw up our hands and give up and let the world go to pot. No, we've got to be making the world a better place. And Christians have just completely discredited themselves in the world, and especially in America, with every pastor, Chicken Little pastor, is, every time something happens in Israel, the sky is falling,
Yeah.
Tribulation's coming. No, we need to be occupying. We need to be standing against evil. Anytime a negative thing happens, we should say, hey, this is wrong. Let's make this right. Let's fix this. Let's do better. Let's call on our leaders to knock this stuff off, to do stuff that actually deters wars and deters fighting. I mean, Trump, he really ought to be getting called on the carpet right now by everybody who voted for him, because he was telling us he was going to end the war in Gaza. On day one, he was going to end the war in Ukraine on day one. He's not done any of that. Things seem to just be escalating. You know why? Because at the end of the day, conflict, it creates the demand for more government, and it causes
100%.
them to become more powerful. Again, the only reason Netanyahu is in power right now is because they are in war. He was about to lose his job before October 7th.
Yeah,
He
he's
had
on the
lost it
way
for a
out.
very short time.
Yeah.
Their system is very different than ours over there, and it's pretty complicated. Most people don't understand it, and so they don't realize that Netanyahu has everything to gain from this war. And the powers that be in our nation and a lot of other places, they have everything to gain from war and conflict. It causes us to say yes to just government overreach on things. And we just need to always see these things as bad. And we need to hold these people accountable. And everyone who supports these wars, whoever is in charge when these things happen, they ought to lose their job. They shouldn't get any votes. But it's just we're doing all the wrong stuff.
Yeah. I remember like some people might think, oh, we're afraid of fighting or whatever it is. Like they make up stuff as they go to make themselves feel better. But it's not fear of going out and attacking people. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about having courage. I don't know if you ever remember that movie called Courage Under Fire with Meg Ryan. Long time ago, probably in the 90s, I think it was. Anyways, I believe she was a helicopter pilot. I could be getting this wrong, but one of the things that happened is their helicopter crashed, and they basically accused her of being like a deserter or something like that, a coward or whatever, and all this kind of stuff, right? So they said that she was, I don't know, a coward. And a lot of people, evacuated that helicopter and all this kind of stuff, and they fended for themselves, kind of thing. They left, right? Turns out they had eyewitness reports that there was shooting going on at the helicopter during the night, into the night. And I don't know why this is getting me emotional, but she was defending the people that were injured while she was injured, fighting till the end, kind of thing. And she kept firing with the gun all night long, while the other guys that were the tough guys left, deserted her. They said, this is a woman, this is a pilot, she's weak, whatever, let's get out of here, let's protect her ourselves. And then they heard gunfiring all night long. She was defending the other people there. And that whole movie was based on, they got it wrong. They thought she was a coward, and she actually stayed to the end, fighting and fighting with very little bullets left, all this kind of stuff. And she was taking on battalions of people coming to attack the helicopter. And it was like, it's a powerful story, but I think there's something to the idea of bridging the gap when people are down and out, that as a Christian, you step in and you pull them out of the pit because they were going to hell. And you stand in the way and say, no, you're not taking this person. You're not. Take me first. You're going to have to go through me first. I'm not going to kill you, but you're going to have to kill me to get to this person. That's, to me, how Christians should live their life. Is if you want to talk about courage and being courageous, you defend the helpless, the weak, the widows, the poor, the homeless. You give them a helping hand and you lift them up when everyone else is writing them off. To me, this is Christianity. It's not going off to fight wars and kill people and give money to kill so that the end times can come in, because the Bible even talks about that there are people like that that try and speed up evil, thinking that they could speed up God's timing by doing these wicked things. And God's like, no, like I have a set time and that is it. So I don't know what you think about that, but
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you're saying, because obviously, and I hope people don't get me wrong. I do believe that prophecy says that there's going to be some certain negative things are going to happen. But I also am well aware of the fact that people have been saying that for a long time, and it could still be a couple hundred years more. Here's what I'm just trying to remind everybody of. What are we supposed to be doing in the meantime? I don't see anywhere in the scriptures where, when all of a sudden we, things start getting bad, that's when we just are supposed to retreat. And no, helping the fatherless and the widows, that's something we're supposed to do. I mean, that's pure religion and undefiled, doing that kind of thing. Go back into the law and look at what it says about oppressing certain people. And if they cry to the Lord, God, I mean, it's going to bring a curse on us. And the reality is, I think Christians in America, we ought to be more worried about what God might do to us as a nation long before end times start playing out, then we should be worried about what the Antichrist is going to do. If it's the Antichrist doing something to us, well, then you know what? We'll get rewards if we suffer, or maybe God will protect us. But if it's God punishing us because we're not busy doing what he said to do, I think we should be more worried about that. So yeah, we're not humanitarians anymore. We're not anti-war. And it's just most Christians, they're going to watch a news night and they're going to get a little excited because Jesus is coming back. Well, listen, I'm excited about Jesus coming back, but I want to be excited about Jesus coming back because I'm doing good and I believe he's going to be pleased with me and what I've accomplished. When I was a kid and my mom would give me a certain amount of time and she's like, I'm going to check and see if you got your room clean. I was, when I would get it clean and ready and I knew I'd done a good job, I was anxious for her to come and check up on what I had done. But when I was being lazy, when I was slacking off, when I wasn't doing things right, I wasn't excited about it then. And you know what? Christians shouldn't be that excited about it right now because we're doing a pretty sorry job in a lot of areas. And so again, the biblical approach that we ought to be taking is getting excited about Christ. We should be more excited about Christ coming when we're doing good, when we're succeeding, when we're seeing revivals, when we're seeing good things take place in the world. That should get us more excited about the coming of Christ. We shouldn't get more excited when things are falling apart. That's not the attitude. And this is going to be one more thing that's going to cause a lot of Christians to just kind of check out because they think we're just about done. And that is for sure unbiblical.
Imagine this, and I'm going to stretch this. This is me going Black Swanee on you again a little bit. I'm taking it to the extreme, okay? So I need you to rope me back in. Imagine this. What happens if we get caught red-handed by God doing something good when he comes back? Imagine what that would look like if we were right in the middle of feeding the poor when he shows up versus grabbing a guy by a throat and choking him out. Heathen, get out of here. I don't know, man. I think that's where you want to be. You want to be caught reading your Bible in the morning. You want to be caught in church. You want to be caught praying over someone, delivering someone, casting out a demon, whatever it is. You want to be there in that moment when Christ comes, because what's he going to say to you? Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Like he caught you red-handed, because we've been caught doing other things in our past, red-handed, places that we shouldn't be, people we shouldn't be with, things we shouldn't be doing. We've been caught. So why not get caught for the right thing, doing the right thing instead of, right? Like it flips it.
Well,
I'm going extreme. But
if watching everything fall apart and the world all go to pot is like, a sign that Jesus is about to come back and all that, it's like, why were we warned about being caught sleeping when he returns.
Hmm.
And maybe that's the way they're going to sleep, just in just kind of giving up and doing nothing. Maybe we've been thinking about sleeping as just, oh, I wasn't aware of what was taking place, rather than I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. I had checked out and, I was just doing nothing. So I don't know, maybe I'm not positive about this, but maybe the way that he's going to find people sleeping, they were well aware that he was about ready to come back. But the problem was they were doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm just saying we have had a million false alarms that the end was nigh. A million. And again, the end's eventually going to come. But one thing that has been consistent throughout it all is that we're always supposed to be actively advancing the kingdom of God. And so let's just keep doing that. And part of advancing the kingdom of God is being peacemakers, and not warmongers. And so let's do that. And Zionism is one of the biggest things that turns Christians into warmongers. And that's just not that's not biblical Christianity, and it's not even historical Christianity.
Yeah.
So, this is really just, it's got to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting when you think about just occupying. Like if you go, if we go to the Bible and you think about Jesus' stories, the hardest hitting stories were when he would say, um, a, a king went away and then he came back. And the ones that were counted as wicked were the ones that said, I think we have more time. He's not coming. So I'm going to beat this guy. I'm going to beat this servant. I'm going to rob this person, choke him out or whatever. And all of a sudden, that's when the master shows up. And he never says good things about them. Like, oh, I'm so happy you're beating up one of my servants. Like, that's amazing. Wow. Who knew you had that in you? Instead, it's like, you wicked and unfaithful servant, cast them out where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. You could do a whole series in Greek, in Hebrew, in Latin, in Swahili, and I could tell you in English, weeping and gnashing of teeth is not a good thing. I don't need to understand any other language. I just need to know English. That's bad news to get cast into outer darkness because you thought you had more time and you're beating the king's servant.
Yeah. Well, one thing that we have in common with the Satan's Little Season people is both of our, the futurist and the Satan's Little Season people, it's a very pessimistic, and we're doing nothing about all the evil that's going on in the world because we're all expecting everything to fall apart. So for the Satan's Little Season people, it's all the deception. It's all the deception. Everything's bad. Churches are corrupt. Everything's a lie. And then, for a lot of us in the futurist world, it's just like all leading to Antichrist. It's all going to go to pot. It's all going to fail. Everything's going to keep getting worse. Nothing's going to get better anywhere. And just none of that is a biblical mentality. And on both sides, it takes us away from the commands for the present. That's more important. And I love prophecy and I love talking about prophecy. Yeah. But sometimes people, they get so into what is to come, they completely neglect what they are supposed to be doing in the present.
Yeah.
And understand, one of the things I used to tell teenagers all the time when I was a youth director is, teenagers often make the mistake of thinking so much about their adult years that they, and about what God's will was for their future, they would often ignore what God's will was for them in the present. It's like, hey, you want to know the best way to find the right person to marry? Be in God's will today. Be doing what God wants you to do today. You're more likely to find the right job while actively doing the will of God. So here's some things, we know we're supposed to be doing. Be in church, be evangelizing, be living godly, be obedient to your parents, be learning, be doing all these things. And if you'll do those things, if you'll just every day get up saying, I'm going to follow my instructions that I have from God today. If you do that, you are way more likely to end up in the right place 5, 10, 20 years from now. But a lot of young people, they have this mentality. They just sit around thinking so much about 20 years from now. They're doing nothing today.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's for sure not God's will. And so obviously, I want to be in the right place. I want to be doing the right things whenever everything goes down.
Yeah.
For sure. But I am almost positive that if I am not doing what God has called me to do today, I will not be in the right place. I will not be doing the right things.
Yeah.
I want to be aware of what's going on when it all starts going down. I hope the Lord makes it clear, but
sure.
I don't know if he will or not. But if he does, I think he's going to more likely to make it clear to those who are right with him during that time. And so if I'm not right with God now, I'm probably, there's a good chance I won't be right with him whenever that happens. So we've got to get back to focusing a whole lot more on what we've been called to do today. And I know a lot of Christians who line up with me on eschatology, and they're very critical and nasty to people who disagree with them, and we all like to pick on the pre-tribbers and stuff, but some of these people are just downright ungodly. And it's like, you aren't doing anything God commanded you to do today.
Yeah.
But yet you think you're better than all these other people who are at least following the present commands.
Yeah.
But maybe they're wrong about the future. I personally think when it all goes down, those who are doing right in the present are going to do okay in the future. And we got a taste of that. This was very eye-opening to me during COVID. Is I was actually more impressed with pre-tribbers and their response to all the wickedness that was going on than I was post-tribbers. And I'm like, wait a minute.
That's interesting.
Shouldn't the post-tribbers with their eschatology be like ready for something like this? Yet they weren't. You know why? Because a lot of post-tribbers are also very ungodly people. They have the right intellectual positions on certain things, but they're very ungodly. And so when it came time to do a difficult thing, they weren't ready. And so it won't be any different too. In fact, if I was, this is me just giving my opinion. Obviously, I can't prove this one way or the other. But if the tribulation were to start tomorrow, I think a lot of pre-tribbers will do a whole lot better in it than a lot of post-tribbers, just because a lot of them are presently doing what God wants them to do a whole lot more than post-tribbers are.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I've often thought about that. Like I believe in a pre-trib rapture.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at it from the perspective, like, as I've been blasted by post-tribbers saying, you're not preparing for the tribulation then. You're not preparing to go in bunkers and to have meat stored up and guns. You're not trained with hand pistols. You can't use a gun on your left or your right or shotguns or whatever. You're going to get mutilated the second that happens. You're not prepared. And meanwhile, I'm like, you know what? What I'm doing is I'm not storing up wealth for myself. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm building a community with my neighbors saying, hey, if anything happens to you guys, let me know and I'll help you out. If your truck gets stuck somewhere in a ditch, let me know. I'll help you out. If you need food, here's the combo to my house or whatever, and that kind of stuff. Obviously, I don't tell them the combo today, but I'm just saying, I'm just saying that, like, if you need something, I'm there for you. I think that wins people over versus saying, don't come near me because you don't know what's in my house. I could have a Doberman. I could have a Dachshund. Dachshunds are pretty deadly. They act like Dobermans. They're little teeny weeny, but that doesn't win people over when times get tough. You think you're gonna have a chance against people that are coming to break into your house to take all your food, and you got a gun when they got machine guns and whatever. You think you're gonna outbattle all those people, and you're gonna find a bunker deep enough to hide your stash and all? Like, it's craziness.
Yeah. Well, back to present commands. Take no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Lay not up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust doth corrupt, where thieves break through and steal. And when Jesus said that, I don't see where he said, now do this until you start seeing the tribulation coming.
And then
When you see that, then the rules all change.
Yeah.
And so again, and I do, like I said, I'm a post-trib person, but even if I am convinced the tribulation is about to come,
yeah,
I don't see where there was an expiration date on the commands that Jesus gave. I feel like the Bible's clear, whether you're pre, mid, or post-trib, whatever, that the commands apply until he comes and takes us out of here.
Yes.
So
100%.
let's focus on the present commands, because I'm not positive, even that even as a post-tribber, I'm not positive that we will be that aware that he is about to return when he does. I like to think we will, but I'm not 100% sure that we will. There's too many warnings for people to just about us sleeping and all that, which tells me it's possible.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting.
Those present commandments.
You're the first post-tribber that I've gotten along with. Funny, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm good at getting along with people who disagree on eschatology, because as a independent fundamental Baptist who was a pre-tribber, there is a pre-trib mafia, and they're horrible. And
I'm scared of them, and I'm a pre-trib. I'm scared of them, and I'm a pre-tribber.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and they could turn on you like this.
Yeah. So it's one of those things, after you get gang stomped, you kind of rethink some things. And the reality is, and I figured this out before I ever got attacked, that, when it comes, and I've learned it even more in recent years, that when it comes to eschatology, again, it's mysterious for a reason. And there are things that are clear, that are what I believe are fundamental, but there's a lot of other things that are just interesting, and we have allowed our interest in those things to make them a bigger deal than they really are. And we've kind of turned them into fundamentals when they shouldn't be, because they're not that clear. And to me, the Bible is here where the Bible is clear and what is fundamental, which is also why I am I have a huge problem with the Satan's little season. It is condemned those who teach that the resurrection is past. That overthrows the faith of some.
Yeah.
Pre-tribbers, while we like to fight with them, they don't teach the resurrection is past.
Right.
Partial preterists do not teach the resurrection is past. To me, what is fundamental, that you must believe that Jesus Christ is returning, that it is in the future, and a literal resurrection. 1 Corinthians 15 is very clear. You must believe in a literal resurrection of the dead. How those things are going to play out and timing and stuff, I don't think it's that big of a deal. The other thing too that's fundamental, don't ever accept any other man as Messiah. When 2 times, and when it says, let no man deceive you, I hear people on the post-trib side, that they apply that to pre-tribbers because they're letting people deceive them about the timing of the rapture. No, pre-tribbers also don't believe in accepting another man as the Messiah. And that's what it's about in both cases. In Matthew 24, when Jesus said, let no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name saying, I am Christ. So I'm not going to believe any man is Christ until I see a man coming in the clouds in power and great glory with a whole bunch of angels. I'll believe it then. And I'll get it right too, because when I see him, he's going to transform me. I'm going to be like him. But also, the other place is in 2 Thessalonians 2. And what does he do? He talks about the man of sin, the son of perdition, who's going to exalt himself above all that is called God. Pre-tribbers, mid-tribbers, post-tribbers, partial preterists don't believe in accepting another man as the Messiah. So as far as I'm concerned, while I love to talk about all these other things, as long as you don't cross those lines of denying a literal resurrection,
Yeah.
and a literal return of Christ in the future,
Yeah.
and you won't accept another man as Messiah, I can't condemn you, but I can disagree.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I can have healthy discussions, debates, all that kind of stuff. But most Baptists that are pre-trib and dispensation, all that, I mean, I heard one pre-tribber, he referred to the fundamental doctrine of the pre-tribulation rapture. It's like, are
Right.
you insane? You just made that, you just created a fundamental all by yourself.
Yeah.
That's not a fundamental doctrine.
I think what we need here is a mid-tribber right in the middle.
Yeah.
And then that would be like, we have to put it in the right position on the
Right.
screen for the audience, someone that we get along with. And I think we would have an interesting conversation because, again, it does come down to the fundamentals. It does come down. And if you think you're in this camp and you don't love your brother, I got nothing to say to you. Like, what can I say to you that's going to convince you of anything if you hate your brother? Like, you're back to milk and cookie stuff now. That's basic 101, that we need to love others, especially of our own that call themselves Christian. And you need to love on them even more and have more patience and this kind of stuff. But yet it's kind of the opposite based on what camp you're in. It's like, oh, if you're from that camp, I can't talk to you, because imagine all 12 tribes camped out and there's a fire going on at night in the middle, and they're like, oh, I need some more firewood. Well, Judah has all the firewood tonight. I'm not talking to them. I'm not talking to them. Like, it's your neighbors, and it's just weird, right? It gets weird real quick. So I appreciate you being on here tonight. And what I usually like to do to end my shows is, do you have any kind of final thoughts as to, everything that we talked about? Anything? I'd love to have you on as a guest again sometime in the future, if we're still here. Right? We gotta make sure.
That's right. Better be listening for the trumpet tonight. Everything going on in Israel and Iran. It could be happening, folks. Maybe you should have had C.I. Darby on the program tonight, who C.I. Darby is an alter ego of mine. And
okay.
And he's a pre-tribber too, and he would be freaking out tonight over everything going on over in the land of Israel. Amen. But yeah, no, I guess just, my final thoughts on that, we kind of got away from the Satan's little season subject, and talked a lot about what was going on. But just my challenge to the Satan's little season people is just, again, you got to be careful building a doctrine around just an assumption and a theory. And I feel like this teaching, somebody read Revelation 20 and just said, what if we're in Satan's little season? What if? And it would be like if I said, what if the rapture was going to come in 2025? And what if that's what the Bible teaches? Then I start doing weird numerology things to try to make it fit. A lot of people did that in 2017 and 2018 with the star constellation thing that everybody got excited about. Somebody got an idea in their head, and then they started trying to make it fit the Bible. Robert Breaker every year makes a video, Rapture 2025, and then he goes and does numerology stuff. You're doing the same thing with this little season doctrine. Somebody thought, what if? And it's like, well, if that were the case, then that would mean all history is a lie. That would mean, and they just come up with all these different things. And it's a way that people have kind of united all the conspiracy theories, the flat earth, the Tartarian, all that. And, I love a good conspiracy theory. I like to think about it, but at the end of the day, a theory is not proof. And in the meantime, you are crossing a line and you're saying the resurrection is past, and you are throwing the faith of some, of many, because the faith is not just a reference to faith in Jesus Christ for salvation. It's in a way of life. It's in a practice that we have, and people are getting out of church, and they are getting away from the things that Jesus Christ commanded. The things that the apostles commanded that we are supposed to be doing, they were supposed to be doing in that present time. We are supposed to be doing those same things in our present time today. And this theology is getting you away from that. So it does. This theory, it crosses the line. And before you cross a line like that, you got to have some kind of proof.
Yeah.
And just saying something is a lie is not proving what is true. So I caution everyone, be entertained, be intrigued, but don't go down this path.
Yeah. And I think, like, again, I'm going to go real deep on you. Maybe this is too deep for you, Brother Tom. Have you ever seen those What If comics?
Yes.
Remember those where the Hulk versus Superman, like two universes? We all know Superman would destroy the Hulk.
I've seen some of those videos on like with Marvel.
The What If, the Watchers or whatever kind of thing, and then crossing universes. It's interesting and stuff, but it's like, if you build a whole doctrine on what if, I would rather see a movie about a what if. What if we are in Satan's little season? I'd go see that movie.
Yeah,
I think that'd be a great one to watch, right? So because it's radically new, and it's radically hard to prove either way. Like, it's very difficult because you don't have a lot of verses. But I could see where they're going with some of it for sure. And I don't want to create another show, but I could see their point. Like, everybody has a point kind of thing, right? Until somebody else brings up, oh, but what about this? Then you're like, oh yeah, you're right. That cancels everything, right?
Yep.
So you got to be careful, like you said, not to shipwreck people's faith as well, right? It's okay to explore, go down these rabbit holes. But what I suggest to people is tie a rope around your waist. And then when you dive in, have a friend that can pull you out. Just have a friend that can pull you out in case you're too deep. So, but thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate you spending the time. It flew by. It was pretty fun.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I hope the audience got something out of this show as well. It's a little bit different format. I created the show. It used to be called Rev 5, where we'd have 5, 6, 7 people on. So I changed the format a little bit to have maybe 2, 3 people on, so we could actually have a conversation instead of just 5 panelists fighting over each other to try and get something in, get a monologue in or something, right? So I hope the audience appreciates this a little bit more. But again, thank you. And let's do it again sometime in the future.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you don't mind sticking around in the background, I'll just say goodbye to everyone.
All righty.
All right. That was Pastor Tommy. You can go look up his channel. Oh, one thing I forgot to ask. What is your YouTube channel?
Yeah. So my prophecy one it's the Spirit of Prophecy 1611. Okay. And then I have my preaching channel is if you do youtube.com/Give Me Liberty Baptist or Liberty Baptist Church of Rock Falls. You'll find it that way.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so go check him out, subscribe to his channel, check out his videos. And I'll put you in the back again. So that was Pastor Tom. So I appreciated him coming on the show, and it's always nice to get a different perspective as well. I think iron sharpens iron, and I hope we sharpen each other tonight, and the audience as well, because it's good to have conversations like this. You're not always you're not always going to agree with each other on everything. Like, I don't agree with everything with my wife when we're going out on a trip or doing something together, or with your children or siblings, whatever. You don't always agree, but you could still love on each other and everything. So I appreciated Pastor Tom, and thank you guys as well for sticking around and watching the show. Really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in another video. And this Sunday is going to be Bridal Wash, so check that out. The gals are going to be doing a show on Sunday because it's Father's Day. I won't be having a Rev Talk. So thanks again. See you guys later. Bye for now.
Black Swan Revelations here on YouTube brought you today's mind-bending journey. Dive into the discussion, your comments, questions, prayer requests,
and powerful testimonies of Jesus' love are what fuel this community. Did today's episode hit home? Smash that like button. New here? Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a live stream or a video upload. Thanks for being part of today's adventure. Catch you in the next video, or maybe even in the clouds. Stay curious, stay blessed.